So we're going to continue our discussion of divisibility. Remember, we talked about a few theorems. Here's another one, but this has to do with prime numbers. So I'm just going to state what it says. It says any integer that's at least 1 is divisible by a prime number. So we're not going to go over this. We're not going to prove it, but I did want to state it. It is something to remember that if you have a positive integer that's bigger than 1, it's divisible by some prime number. Let's look at an example now of a question. It's going to be similar to one you're going to see in your homework. Is the following statement true or false? So the statement says, for all integers a and b, if a divides b and b divides a, then a equals b. So here, this kind of question, it's different than ones maybe you've seen before. Usually I will tell you to prove something. But here, you've got to decide first, is it true or is it false? So you might want to run through some examples that might help. Another thing you can do is think about if you were to prove this. What would the starting point of your proof be? Remember, that's the first line of your proof if you were proving it. Suppose a and b are integers such that, remember, you need to satisfy the if condition, a divides b and b divides a. So if it was true and if you were proving it, that would be the first sentence of your proof. So from here, you've got to ask yourself, must a equal b? Or could it happen that a is not equal to b for some a and b? So we've got to ask ourselves, is the conclusion part, the part after the then, is that true or is it false? Well, let's think about this. I know that a divides b, so that tells me something. That means b equals a times something, a times h, we'll say. I also know that b divides a, so that tells me a equals b times something. We'll go with k for some h and k in the integers. So what I'm going to do is take this equation right here. Let's pull it down. And I can use substitution, kind of like we did in class, and plug in for a. So I would get b equals b times k times h. And multiplication is associative, so I can move around my parentheses here like that. So that means that b times something equals b, so this something in this parentheses has to be 1. K times h must be 1. So what are the possibilities for k and h? Remember, k and h are whole numbers, they're integers, so they could either be, both be 1. If they're both equal to 1, well then that means up here in these equations, A and B would be equal, but that's not the only possibility. They could both be -1. If they're -1, looking back at those equations, A and B aren't equal. They have opposite signs here. So there is a case where A and B are not equal, so I'm going to say that this is false. And we need to give a counterexample. So pick two integers that have opposite signs for your counterexample. So we could go with, let's say A is 2 and B is -2. Well then, 2 divides -2 because it's 2 times -1 is -2. And -2 divides 2 because it's -1 times -2. So we have that 2 divides -2 and -2 divides 2, but they aren't equal. So there's our counterexample. So that statement was not true. So sometimes when you're trying to decide if it's true or false, try to start the proof like it was true and see, is the conclusion true or is it false?